Hi, friends and family, and welcome back to another edition of the Purple Couch Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about Kevin McAllister. Does your 4-year-old run the house? Is your 4-year-old the demon child? Does she not take no for an answer? Does your 4-year-old have the terrible 2s but the terrible 4s? We're going to talk in detail today about how to take control back in your house. Come on down, sit back and relax for another episode of the Purple Couch Podcast. Hi, friends and family, and welcome back to another episode of the Purple Couch Podcast. Today, we're going to go right into it because we've got some parents that are going through, well, the terrible 4s. I was like, we hear about the terrible 2s. I love 2. I thought 2 was just inquisitive and let's play. And, we were even nonverbal. We're going through the autism, but 2 compared to 4, night and day difference. So I think we need to start coming up with a little, oh, you're not there yet. Ooh.
Try 2 times 2.
Yeah, no.
That's
I'll take my 1.
Yeah, I'm 4s, and my oldest one, it was 3, 4. That was about right. 4, 5. Yeah.
So, well,
you got to come up with a name.
Exactly. It has to be very catchy with the 4s.
Yeah.
So I want to read this question from our mama. My kid, a 4-year-old, runs the house, and it is borderline insanity. How do I regain control? What's funny is I want to read to you the other questions that came in and the reason we saved this segment just for these parents. What do I do when my kid throws a tantrum? What do I do when my kid is aggressive towards their sibling? And my kid hits me when I tell him to not do anything. What do I do? My kid just says no. We see this a lot.
My 2-year-old started to do that.
Really?
Got it. Yeah.
Yep.
This is where the individuality really is coming out.
Yep.
We have seen 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds with the hands on the hips. We've seen them with the finger in the air. We've seen the head bobbing. And it's so funny because, guys, this is all learned behavior.
Absolutely.
So as we talk about our 2-year-olds,
Yeah.
and we talk about our 4-year-olds, and we talk about some of these outbursts, we're talking about learned behavior. Where did these children learn these traits? And sometimes the things we don't like the most about our kids is a really hard self-reflection at ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
So today we're going to discuss what to do when little Tina has got the attitude.
We went from Johnny to Tina.
I was like, Sally's taking the back door right now. Tina's got the twos.
That's perfect.
So we all experience it. I think the first thing that we really need to ground back to our parents is that this is universally the time where independence is really being fostered and self-expression. And especially for our kids that are neurodiverse, this can come in many forms. Sometimes it can be a scream. We had one child, and this just happened recently, I want to say about a week ago. I had one of our teachers, I was doing my rounds, and she was like, oh my goodness, one of your high schoolers saved me. And I'm like, oh, really? So one of our students was able to pick up on the, for lack of a better words, I'll have my clinicians tell you all the clinical, but we have a student that just screams. And for those that are not around her, they think that, oh, that is just a scream. Well, she gets excited and she starts replaying movies. And when she's saying it, instead of just saying it, I'm going to try to do this so I don't hit the microphone. So the Home Alone, you dirty rat, she would be like, and so she, the outsider, that's just a scream. But when you start to understand the child, you understand, well, what is she doing? And it was Home Alone. And I think that's probably why I've got the Home Alone stuff rattling in my head, is because one of our high school children that are on the spectrum, and I should say young man, actually talked to one of the teachers and was like, Miss Michelle, don't you know what they're saying? And she was like, no. And he starts rambling the scenes from Home Alone. And so that little bit of knowledge was able to get the teacher to get to her level and the understanding. If you would have seen her face, So she just lightened up like, oh my goodness, you got me. And it's the same way, whether they're teens, whether they're 12, whether they're 13, or whether they're 4 or 5. It's number one, understanding what they're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Because the tantrum may not be a tantrum. We can go into one of our students at the early intervention center.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, one of the things that matches to this one student, we call it scripting, right? So she was scripting the Home Alone sequence of movies, really. She was still doing it the other day.
Was it? So you know who
Once
I'm
you
talking
got it, I
about.
was like,
Yes.
oh, that's movie number 2. But the kid you're talking about with early intervention, he doesn't have a whole great Bible of language.
No.
His vocal language is not there. So, but his way of expressing himself and communicating to the world is through screaming, through aggression,
Yes.
through physicality, right? Through his, we call them emotional outbursts instead of tantrums now for scientific reasons, because that's exactly what it is. It's an emotional outburst. It's
Yes.
In layman's terms, it's a cry for help, a cry for needs, a cry for communication. But that's his way of communicating.
Absolutely.
And as much as we've worked on other different vehicles of communication, there is something to be said about when a child's in that mode of crisis, in that mode of need, that heightened state of, I don't know how else to express this except I need something. And they get very upset and angry and things like that. And, one of the things I was kind of reflecting on with these set of questions has nothing to do with kids. It has to do with, in business, we call it change management. And what's the first stage of change management? It's the awareness for the need for change. So this mom that says, my 4-year-old's running my house and it's borderline insanity, you're at least aware, stage 1.
Yes.
Awareness. Because if you're not aware of that need for change, if you're not aware of the situation, you're probably not going to change anything.
Absolutely.
You're just going to drive yourself crazy. But in these 2 examples of these children, it's just getting that awareness level of what are they saying? Why are they doing what they're doing before we even go down the rabbit hole of how do we improve things?
Absolutely.
So that awareness is key. And I think that's something to tell our families here is, are you really aware of the situation?
Well, in these both situations, we were looking at something that could have been taken, and I love the changing in the terminology, because if we change the terminology, we're changing the energy around the word. And so if we're looking at a child that we would say, my demon child, why? Why is that child a demon child? For me, I'm going to be a little harder than Manny was, because if it is causing chaos, to me, that would say that there is a lack of structure that's in the home already.
Yep.
And so the child is just feeding on that lack of structure. So sound, music, even if you have a child that is completely nonverbal, so that there is no conversation that you can actually have with the child, which was in our example number 2. I just happened to be there that day, and we had a little guy and he was in crisis. And for him, like Manny said, it is to latch out. And I do that because it's like a cat that pulls out their nails and then grabs onto anything and everything for dear life. That's what this little guy was going through. And through his expression, most people are standoffish. And for him, he needed that. He needed to understand, hey, I can't tell you, but I've got stuff in my eyes, I have stuff in my mouth, and it's bothering me, and I'm screaming, and I'm in pain, and I have no words to use.
Right.
So he was using what he had.
Right.
And that happens so many times, not just with our children, with our partners, with our colleagues.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It goes back to the quantum. I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my goodness, Manny, this goes back to quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
And this is understanding that the entire surrounding, the environment completely around the child ultimately affects the child. So boundaries, mom and dads, to all of these questions, boundaries are the first thing that need to be put in place. But we really need to understand what are boundaries. When I set up my own personal boundaries, it is not something that Manny is in charge of. It is not something that Missy is in charge of. It is not something that my child is in charge of. It is a boundary I'm placing within myself. So if your child has got toys all over the living room floor, which I think that's one that we can all relate to at some point in time, whether you have children or you don't have children, or you're visiting your niece or nephew, or you're at your grandparents' house and all the kids come over, the toys all over the floor. Well, that sets me off. You can see my body language just talking about it. I'm like, oh, everything has its place. And we're like, okay. So a good way to do that for your own personal boundary is then to put a baby gate up, and where you can have the chaos. That can be your area of chaos. And I personally am not going to look at that area of chaos because I have structure in my surroundings around us. So a lot of times when we talk to families, that's one of the triggers is Johnny doesn't put his toys away. He wants everything out. And a lot of times our children do that because they want to line all their toys up. They want to spin all their toys, but they want every animal that's in their toy bin all out at the same time so they can see all of them. They want every block, all the red blocks together, the blue blocks together, the yellow and the green, and don't touch any of them. But you see this pile is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So what we need to do is allow them that independence, allow that freedom in an area that you then set your boundary and step back from. So that can be one coping skill that parents can use.
I think that you hit on so many important pieces there that relate to a lot of things we talk to our families about and it's in these questions, right? So they have a kid that tantrum, they have a kid that's aggressive. But it's allowing certain things to occur. You're reinforcing certain things to happen, even if you do nothing, because the child either escapes or avoids something. They don't want to pick up the toys. They don't want to clean up their mess. They don't want to follow your rules. But by allowing them to escape and avoid it, they got what they wanted. A great example just happened yesterday. So yesterday, doing an assessment, a clinical ABA assessment with a 2.5-year-old kid, 2.5-year-old little girl, cute as can be, funny, smiling, whatever, does not like to do anything you ask her to do. Literally, she would grab a bucket of toys, dump them on the ground, put the bucket of toys, play for a little bit, walk to another set of toys, but don't clean up. So mom happened to be in the room and I asked her, so tell me what you do at home. She goes, I clean it up. Why do you clean it up? Why doesn't she clean up? Well, if she cleans it up, she starts to bite me. Oh, well, let's test that theory. So we're going to test that theory, literally say, okay, we're going to clean this up. And she went to bite, but redirect her body, do hand over hand, got her to clean up the toys. And mom's looking at me the whole time like, oh, so you do hand over hand? So well, I'm not going to let her not clean up her mess. She goes, oh, so that's what I should do. I was like, well, how often do you clean up her mess after her? All the time. Do you want to do that for the rest of your life? And that becomes the conversation.
Yes.
If I allow it now at 2 years old, what's it going to be like when they're a teenager?
Oh, and behind the wheel of a car.
Oh, yeah.
That's the real understanding. Road rage. Where do you think that begins? And we've got to curb it at the youngest area.
So setting those kind of ideas of ground rules of what you're going to allow, what you're not going to allow. And so she tried to bite. What do? I avoid the bite for safety, right? So I like, number one is boundaries. Number two is protect safety of all, right? So my kid's aggressive to our siblings, protect the siblings, right? Before you go into the realm of like trying to modify the behavior, consequences or timeout or whatever, make sure everybody's safe. That would be my second is the safety. So am I safe? I didn't get bit. Or if she did get me, not bleeding, so I'm good. So let's keep going, right? And I do that with my own kids too. One of my twins I got one who's kind of aggressive and the other one's just kind of sassy. Right? I got the sassy one, I got the bulldog. That's what my wife says. The bulldog who just kind of goes for it, and then the sassy one. So we do the actual old proven method of the timeout. And timeout's a good ABA approach. It's just timeout for reinforcement. Oh, you don't want to do what you want to do? Well, we're not going to do that. You go into the thinky corner is what we call it, the thinky corner. And both kids actually sit in the thinky corner. They don't like the thinky corner. They scream and cry the whole time, but they're not hurting themselves. They're not hurting anybody else. And then when they're done in the thinky corner for a minute or so, they come out, they clean their mess, they do whatever we ask them to do. Good.
Real quick, I want to jump in there. We got to talk about duration.
Duration, yes.
So timeout does work. Whether you call it, We prefer in our environment not to use negative connotation.
Mhm.
I've heard the naughty corner, the timeout chair. I love the thinking.
The thinking corner.
That works out so nice,
Oh, yeah.
the thinking corner. I love that. I love the flow of that. So when we're talking about duration, that's how much time do they actually stay in timeout.
Yeah.
That's going to be judged based on your child. An easy rule of thumb is that as a parent, you need to understand how much attention span does your child have.
Mhm.
Because they may tell you that it's 1 minute per year.
Mm.
It's not good science there.
You will understand your child.
Yeah.
30 seconds of isolation for a child is severe,
hmm
Mhm.
especially one that's attention seeking.
Yeah.
So that complete, but understand again, parent, is that's not we're setting him in the thinking corner and we're still calling him and we're talking about what he's done wrong and oh my goodness, and I got to clean up all your toys and you touched your sister and we're not going to do that anymore. And this is no, we're talking about giving him or her time to reflect on what they did,
Definitely.
you know, and I think that's very key because
Oh, yeah.
we as parents in this society today, and I say that as we, not just you sitting at home and me talking to you. I'm talking about united as families. We're all in crisis at some point in time.
Mhm.
We are in turmoil in the world around us, and our children pick up on that. Same thing, quantum entanglement. They pick up on the energy that is around them. So you may be furious. You may be clenching your jaw. So pay attention to your own physical.
Mhm.
Your physical tips and cues will tell you if you are too elevated to discuss that matter with the child at that time. If you are a parent that has to have everything clean and you come in and dad's been watching the kids all day and the whole house is tore up. Well, back in my day, they would have been like, what is it? Calgon, take me away. It's time for a bath. You know, that's what you need to understand. What do you need to do to put yourself in the mental space to be able to address the matter calmly?
Mhm.
Because if you yell, you're only teaching that child to yell.
Right.
Mhm.
If you show anger, you're teaching that child anger. You know, it used to be, I can tell you, because I was a biter. I was a biter, and my mom did the good, let me bite you back,
Mhm.
you know. And again, different time, different stage,
Still
Mhm.
exists. People talk about that still.
Oh, yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
But what are we doing? We're showing them that, hey, it hurts, but that's not the correct behavior. We want to
Right.
teach
Mhm.
empathy.
Right.
We want to get down to their level. And that doesn't mean, Johnny, do you know what you did? And Tina puts her hands, I know what he did. Yeah, no, Tina, I'm not talking to you right now. Your brother and I are having a conversation. And that's another thing with the siblings that we see a lot. Remember that sometimes what you feel is aggression. You need to talk to the sibling, especially if it is a neurotypical and a neurodiverse child.
Mhm.
Yep.
So to the mom that's having the aggression with the sibling, got to get to the root matter. And you have to educate the sibling of the differences.
Mhm.
That is key because the sibling needs to understand that there is a developmental difference between the two, whether it is a younger sibling and the older sibling has a developmental delay and doesn't know how to express themselves properly. So educate the sibling. The other part is you don't know. The sibling may not be able to say to you, because they're the ones with the neurodiversity, that
Mhm.
Tina's over here pulling my hair and I finally had enough of it and I punched her.
Mhm.
That happens a lot. And then Tina's the one telling you, she punched me in the face because Tina has the words to use. And then Johnny's looking at you like, I don't know what I did wrong. I defended myself, but he can't express that to you.
Mhm.
So again, remember, there's multiple sides to every story. Manny did hit home. Protect the sibling.
Yeah.
Protect both of your
Mhm.
children.
Yeah.
Because even the other sibling acting out in a line of aggression, we need to find out why.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So always find out, ABA-wise, what is the
Yep.
function of the behavior?
Yep.
So Missy, can you touch base with our audience on what the basic 4 functions are?
Yep. Yeah. So in the field of ABA, we say that there are 4 basic functions to all behaviors. So it's going to be to escape or avoid something you don't want to do, which first, let me say, we all do all of these throughout the day. Every single person on the planet probably cycles through these throughout the day.
Yes.
But so escape or avoid something you don't want to do, gain attention. And with that attention, good or bad. So a lot of times with our kiddos, especially, let's say you got a kiddo in a group of 22 kids, hey, they don't care if they're being yelled at or being told good job. In that moment, the teacher is talking to them, ignoring the other 21 kids. So get the attention in that way.
Absolutely.
Definitely social media. That's pretty much all just straight attention right there.
Oh,
But they're the good, the bad, the ugly. But
correct.
we're social beings as humans. Attention is a big thing that we seek out. The next one's going to be to gain access to something that we don't have, whether that's money, an iPad, a toy, an activity, going to Disney, going on a trip, vacation, going to see a favorite person, kind of any of those things, just gaining access to something not currently in your possession. Last one's going to be that sensory seeking. So we do it because it feels good, whether it's that physical sensation, like getting a massage, could do that all day long. I think our kiddos, if we just hired a masseuse, that'd probably fix a lot of the behaviors. Just give them 10 minutes throughout the day. That or because that more internal sense that it makes you feel satisfied inside, like that good feeling internally. I also like to say that there is that fifth function that we will find a way to prove in the field of ABA,
Yeah.
but that control seeking.
Yes.
That is such a big thing with kiddos. That's almost a combination of escape and attention in a way combined and intertwined, but different in every situation as well.
Yeah.
Especially with a kiddo, I mean, you don't have control over a lot as you go throughout life. You get told what to do at home by your parent, at home by parents, caregivers, at school as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't have a car, you don't have money, you don't have a phone to communicate. And so you don't have a lot of control. So engaging in behaviors trying to gain that sense of control is a lot that we see out for our kiddos.
Absolutely.
I do like, too, something that you both touched on with the changing at home with the meltdowns is that you want to start small. Like get that one boundary set up, maybe do the thinking corner.
Yes.
Because definitely if you have a kiddo who's used to running the house and then you come in one day, not your house, my house.
Mhm.
Correct.
It's going to be an awful weekend for everyone involved and just create a lot of resentment as well. Definitely those small baby steps, making slow changes at a time is the goal, and not like, hey, this weekend we're hitting it hard. Life is changing.
Yeah.
And that's the merger of what we do in the school can go into our workplace, into our personal lives, and it all starts with baby steps. That was the biggest part in the organizational behavioral management was change management. That was the toughest thing to understand, is that as a business owner and a private business owner, we can make change very fast. If we see something that's broken, we fix it immediately. If we see something, just like you said, with the fifth function, we can implement that and already start looking at that and say, okay, what can we do to implement procedures that will take some of that pressure off and alleviate that? But you have to make it in small baby steps. And it's funny because the last thing that I want to discuss real quick here is the parent that says, what do we do when all she does is say no? Let's change the terminology. So that's not an option today. Sometimes our kids, no, 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 no. Pam, sit down. No, 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 no. Missy, no, 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 no. Everything is no, 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 no. So we have to, number one, understand, is that the child's only form of communication? Yes and no. If the child says no quite frequently, again, we have to look in that mirror and go, oh my goodness, how many times do I say no a day? And start tallying on our own behavior. Because a lot of times what we see, especially in early intervention, is the first couple words that come into play are no or okay. 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 And we're like, oh, so which one of you all are the okay? And I like to look at that going back into my elementary days. I used to always go,
Yep.
Do you? Yep.
Yes,
Oh, Do you see?
Yeah.
Do you see how easy that we self-reflect on this? And when you start to self-reflect, then really things become more apparent. You'll notice that your children are little mini yous. They are absorbing, collecting, internalizing everything that you are doing. So if that child is always saying no to you, what you need to do is first come up with a different phrase. Not an option is a very good phrase. Not an option because it's not no. We can do that later. It's not an option right now. The next part, food options. Let's say that we have a candy bar and we have broccoli. You do not set these two out in front of the child and say, well, which one do you want? And then get upset when they choose the candy bar. So let's give them options that you're going to be happy with no matter what, and you're going to allow them to choose, because now you're building independence and you're building confidence. If the child goes to do something that you are not in agreement with, no. How about, we could get hurt if we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Give them the reason why you're going to tell them no instead of using the word no. They will absorb it. They will understand it. I'll go back to a story as we end this episode. I was a very bright little girl growing up. I was that tantrum child. I hope you all could hear that on the podcast. Giving a shout out to my mom for tolerating it. So my mom was a very, very firm user of the word no. So she was under the guidance that when she had children, that you were to remove anything that was breakable off the coffee tables, off everything that was in toddler stage. You removed all of that. You safety guarded your house. Mm-hmm. Well, my mom was not a firm believer in the system. So she was going to teach boundaries. So every time I would go close to something I was not supposed to touch, no. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning, okay. But being that I was sassy like little Tina, I would walk right up to the object I was not supposed to touch, get about 2 inches away from it, look at her dead in the face, and go, no. If that is not learned behavior, I do not know what else to tell you guys. So what you need to do is just change the conversation. Mm-hmm. Change the conversation that you are having with your child. They are smart enough. You may not be giving your child enough credit, because if they are running your house, if they are aggressing, if they're putting their foot down and they're saying, nope, this is not happening. And guys, we've all watched enough TikTok reels that we all know we've seen the little tiny 2-year-olds hands on the hips. No, we're not having this. I run the house. Well, why are they running the house? They're only about 2 foot tall.
That's right.
You are the adult and you are the parent. Do not give up your control. And if you need help, then you just come on back and visit us here at the Purple Couch Podcast. Until next time, happy Valentine's Day from Florida. We'll see you all soon.